The Fractal FM9 is an incredible machine, but it is also very complicated and intimidating, especially at first. So here are 13 of my beginner-friendly tips of how you can get the most out of your Fractal FM9. Let's get into it. Tip number one is having the ability to mute your guitar signal while you're tuning. I discovered this the other day at band practice. When I hit on the tuning button, it instantly started tuning, but it didn't mute the signal, and it was very annoying. So this is how you mute the signal. So in order to mute the signal when you are tuning, you want to first go into the tuner. As you can see, mine says output muted. Then press the right page to go over to the configure screen. Nav down to the mute line and rotate the value dial to either input or output. Output will mute the signal at the end of the chain, while input mutes the signal at the beginning. Both allow you to still tune. It just depends on if you want to have the effects trail off or not, which I do want, so I will change this to input. The next tip is that you can use the FM9 as a pedal board. You don't necessarily have to use the amp and cab simulators. If you're running like into a backline amp for a quick show, you can use this and all the effects as a normal pedal board. So while the FM9 and the Fractal stuff is known for their amp modeling, you can also use the FM9 just as a pedal board and run only effects. I'm actually using this unit right now this way for my up-and-coming show this weekend. It's a metal/metalcore show, and I'm playing through a clean Fender Deluxe, which is not a metal amplifier by any stretch of the imagination. Luckily, I can add a few effects to this signal chain, and I'll have a pedal board that is designed to do metal music and more in no time. It's also important to know that if you're using it as a pedal board only, make sure you're using output 3. The FM9 has a lot of creative ways of how you can dial in your perfect tone. There's scenes, there's presets, there's the song set list selection, and the best way to switch between all of these is to use the master global layout. When you first fire up the FM9, your layout will look like this. You'll have 5 presets on the bottom, a scene button, a tap tempo, and a bank up and a bank down. But the FM9 can do so much more. You just have to unlock the master layout. And to enter this mode, hold down the bank down button and then briefly tap on the bank up button while holding the bank down. This will take you to the master layout mode, which you can tell by its yellow rings. In this mode, you can switch to presets, scenes, effects and more effects, the looper, per preset settings, channels, and sets song functionality. I'll go ahead and click into the scenes, and you can see the 8 different scenes of this Brit pre-profile. Then if you want to return to the master layout, just hold down the far right button and tap the one right above it. And I should really just number these. So hold down 9 and then tap the 3 and you'll be back in the master layout mode. So I imagine if you have an amp modeler, you're going to probably be listening through headphones. One thing to note is, how do you adjust the headphone volume? If you're like a majority of amp modeler users, you probably play with your headphones. But if you notice your signal is either too soft or too loud, just remember the headphone signal is controlled by the output 1 knob. So we've talked a little bit about scenes, presets, and channels. Well, what are the differences between scenes and channels? They seem like the same thing, don't they? They might seem the same, but they are actually quite different. Think of scenes as turning on a group of effects from your signal chain all at once. So if you want a solo boost, and scene 2 turns on your overdrive, delay, and an EQ pedal. Channels, on the other hand, are essentially different slots to plug in different effects. Like some amplifiers have a clean, dirty, and a lead channel, the FM9 channels let you choose different amp models, or different effects. Say you want to have a Fender Deluxe on channel A and a Marshall on channel B. This allows you to have multiple amps without running into processing power, or making an entirely different preset using the same effects. If you're going to play the FM9 live, you need to check out this songs and set list feature. It is literally a game changer. The set song functionality is probably my favorite feature of the FM9. Say you've dialed in a bunch of different presets or different songs and they're scattered all over the 512 presets that you're allotted. It would be a nightmare to have to copy and paste that in order to put those into set list order. Then what happens when you want to change the set list right before the gig? Enter in sets songs, which allows you to craft up to 120 different songs and their own scenes independent of the presets, and allows you to easily order them. I made a full guide a few weeks ago, and I'll link that video in the pinned comment below and above here in the card. When you're building out your own custom presets, you want to make sure the output levels are the same, or at least very relatively the same, amongst each of the presets.
You can do many different things with your presets. You can make them louder, softer, heavier, lighter, more swirly, more dry. But what I have found is that you should always try to make the presets the same volume as one another, especially if you're planning on playing live or recording. It will make your life, the sound guy's life, and the mixing engineer's life that much easier if all of your presets are leveled to the same general output volume. If you just plan on playing by yourself forever, then you can skip this step.
If you're going to play the FM9 live and you want to feel the amp behind you, play with a powered speaker or a clean amplifier and a cabinet.
One of the biggest arguments against amp modelers is that they don't feel like amps in the room because they're not pushing air. Many times people will just run them front of house and monitor them either via a wedge on stage or with in-ears. But I like to feel air move as well, which is why I run the front of house via output 1 and then run a separate signal through the Seymour Duncan Power Stage 200. The signal is without the cabinet block because the Power Stage 200 then runs into a Black Star 2x12, which pushes air on stage, which allows me to easily feedback the guitar and makes the stage look more like a rock show because looks are important too.
Did you know that you can set multiple amps and cabinets within a single preset so you can have that dual amp sound?
If you've ever looked at a guitar player's backline from a large concert or read any recording magazines, you'll likely have heard the term about using two simultaneous yet complementary amps at the same time to either play or track. Luckily, the FM9 lets you do just this. Simply add a new amp and a new cabinet block right below your existing amp and cabinet blocks and connect the shunts to the effects before and after, and now your signal chain includes two amplifiers and two cabinets. You can then mix to taste. Just watch out for your DSP that you have in reserves because amps and cabs take up a lot. And unfortunately, the FM3 cannot do this. It's only the FM9 in the Axe-FX 3.
And on that note, you can have actually two different rigs within the FM9. Say you want to have a guitar rig for your guitar player and a bass rig for your bass player and play them both in one FM9 unit.
And speaking of multiple amps and cabinets, you can also use the FM9 to run two rigs at the same time using inputs 1 and 2 and outputs 1 and 2. You could run two guitars or a guitar and a bass into one FM9. And you're probably thinking, well, how would you switch each effect? Well, you could use the Sets Songs functionality to switch both at the same time. This way your sound will always be in sync with one another and the song. It's a little bit different, but this could work in a pinch if an amp goes down before a show or in between sets.
Make sure you learn how to connect external pedals, especially if you want to have a wah or a volume swell kind of pedal sound.
The FM9, like most amp modelers, allows you to connect an expression pedal to utilize built-in wah effects or adjust almost any parameter on the fly with your foot. I use the EV1 by Fractal and either set it to a volume swell or a wall pedal depending on the preset. Note that you will have up to 3 pedals to attach to your FM9, and if you want to use a pedal like this Mission Engineering that has a switch, that will take up 2 of your slots. And you're going to need a TRS cable, which is a tip, ring, and sleeve cable, or a few of these to control and connect your expression pedals.
The best way to record the FM9 is through USB recording. This also allows you to reamp without the need for external gear and cables and figuring out how to do that. You can do it all within the FM9 via a USB cable.
If you're planning on recording your guitar or bass tracks with your FM9, you could plug it directly into an audio interface, but I have found the best way to record it is to record via USB cables. This allows you to record a process track and a DI track at the same time, and then you can use that DI track to reamp the signal later if you want to adjust the tone, which you could also do via the USB cable as well, and you don't even need a reamp box, so it makes the process that much easier. Note that inputs 1 and 2 are going to be your process signal, and then your DI track signal is going to be from 5 and 6.
And tip number 13 is to read the manual. The manual is full of tons of different tips and tricks like this, but there are a few things that I don't think are in the manual that I said, hey, this is a pretty useful tip for the FM9. So check out this video over there, and I'll see you over there. And until then, let the music play.